gonna get to know you. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna get to know you and what you're all about. We're gonna get to know just what makes you feel alive. We're gonna get to know how you build, lead, and thrive.
Build, Lead, and Thrive. Voices of the Androscoggin.
Welcome to Build, Lead, Thrive, Voices of Androscoggin, a bi-monthly podcast that features in-depth conversations with the people shaping Androscoggin County. Each episode dives into personal stories showcasing the leaders, entrepreneurs, and community folk behind the region's economic and community vitality. I'm your host, Shanna Cox, President and CEO of the LA Metro Chamber. I'm joined by local talent, longtime friend, and our producer, Mark Turcotte.
How's it going?
Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
This is the second time that we've seen each other since the start. This year is both fast and slow. Like it's already been a lifetime of January 2026. Together, Mark and I highlight the leaders and entrepreneurs building a stronger economy and vibrant community right here in our region, sharing stories of how they build, lead, and thrive. Today's conversation is about housing, community ownership, and what it looks like when people roll up their sleeves and stay in it for the long haul. We're joined by Craig Saddlemire, Cooperative Development Organizer with the Raise Op Housing Cooperative. Hi, Craig.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me here today.
Also surviving January?
I am surviving January.
Are you thriving in January?
This is a hard January,
yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
But I'm here and I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the community that I have that, is getting through it with me.
Yeah. Yeah. That. January feels like a survival month and not a thriving month. Yeah.
Certainly this year, yeah.
Maybe we'll, in the Build, Lead, Thrive ethos, maybe we'd name that the build. We're just building in January, building towards the rest of this year.
Yeah,
no,
sure.
that resonates. Let's dive into a little bit more about Craig. Craig, I might make you blush a little bit. Craig has spent more than 2 decades working at the intersection of housing justice, smart growth, and community organizing here in Androscoggin County. Through Raise Op, he's helped develop and renovate resident-owned affordable housing, including some of the first certified passive house apartment buildings in the county. Before focusing full-time on housing, Craig had a pretty diverse life. He ran a video production company, Round Point Movies, producing documentaries on urban planning and community organizing that are still used in college classrooms across the country. He also served our community in both public and volunteer leadership roles, including time on the Lewiston City Council, chairing the city's housing committee, helping establish Lewiston's first 24/7 low-barrier shelter, and currently serving as president of both the Lewiston-Auburn Area Housing Development Corporation and Community Concepts Housing Development Corporation. In 2024, Craig received the Paul Govro Legacy Award, recognizing his longstanding commitment to community-driven solutions. On the side, or maybe the foundation to Craig's life, Craig's married to Julia Harper. She's a member of the Lewiston School Committee. They have an amazing and adorable and sharp and witty 4-year-old son, who I love, who's deeply passionate about articulated dump trucks, which may be the most important credential of all. Did I miss anything?
You covered it pretty well, I'd say. Thank you.
Yeah. So my personal connection with Craig, he's certainly raised up as a member of the chamber, and he's been active in leading and supporting community in all the ways I just described. But Craig was one of the first people in Lewiston who welcomed me as a community member as I made this my home almost 2 decades ago, and has been welcoming community members since. And so in addition to this beautiful resume, you were just like a wonderful, warm human that has been, I think, the starting link and the connecting point for so many people who are actively contributing to community and continue to show up and do so in different ways. And that's what we love to highlight here, is just like stories of real people doing real work and how that shows up in big and small ways. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. The articulated dump trucks are great. He also he's a big fan of rocket ships.
He does like rocket ships a lot. I mean, it's a lot of, dinosaurs, rocket ships, but it's really construction vehicles is his expertise. In terms of the level of the detail that he's investing in is really construction specific.
I absolutely love that. And it's convenient because you're around some actual development.
When we were developing our first new construction project on 198 Blake Street, it was just a block from my home. And this was during the pandemic. So when he was an infant, every day was just,
Let's go check it
let's
out.
go check out the construction site. That's like the main, it's an outdoor activity. So he's grown up watching a lot of construction. And he might have navigated towards that anyway, but he certainly had enough life experience to solidify that as an important thing.
Well, and now there's some construction happening in your neighborhood, so the story continues for him.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, which is when Craig and I started back in the day, there wasn't a lot of new construction in general. I would go so far as to say there was zero infill construction in the downtown at the time I came to live here. I mean, I'm sure there was at some point in history, but from like probably mid 1990s on, there hadn't been new investment or construction. And I think 198 Blake Street was one of the first infill properties to say like, no, these vacant kind of, we used to call them in the housing work that we did, these like toothless lots in the smile of the downtown. Mm-hmm. We were told no one would ever, that this will never, and we've seen so much infill development in the downtown, but you were one of the first to really like put the shovel in the ground and break ground and do it.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're defining infill as like truly just using existing lots and building to the existing code and density standards for those lots, then Blake and Walnut are kind of the first infill projects. Of course, we've had other buildings get developed, but they have been at a bigger scale. Mm-hmm. They've involved combining a lot more lots to do it, and usually seeking spot zoning to allow the size and scale.
And some waivers.
They're of a different, so they're different character and different scale than the neighboring properties. So we really wanted, with that project, we really wanted to do something that just felt like it belonged, fit right into the neighborhood, and demonstrate that it could be done.
And not just demonstrate, but make it easier for other people.
Right.
So your commitment to like follow code, stay in code, and then make your blueprints available, kind of common licensing.
Yeah, just for free basically, folks can ask us for it, fill out a really simple free form on the website, and we will share our construction documents, we'll share our pro forma, and like sort of a narrative about the project so other people can learn from it. I mean, it's not enough. You could not just build the same building immediately with that, but you could get a construction estimate with it, and you could take it to an architect and say, this is the kind of building I'd like to do, and at least give them a head start on like a lot of the specifics of someone would want to achieve with it.
So I mean, I get to work with developers in this role here at the Chamber of all different sizes and types, and developing different uses and different industries. Everything you just described that's freely available is all of the things that is their competitive edge that they won't ever share with anybody.
Right.
So it's just like a fundamental shift in philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, we're mission based, and we do this. We're not doing this work to make money, and we don't really make money at it at all. That's why we have to do a lot of fundraising. But people need homes.
Yeah.
And we want to be a part of getting people into homes as much as possible, both our own residents, but we need, it's all hands on deck to address the housing crisis. So we need to share information, like the stuff that's easy to share and replicate. We're certainly going to do it, and we really encourage anyone who has the ability to do so. I mean, we're not trying to put architects out of the job by any means, and I don't think sharing that kind of material is doing that. But I think the industry is very, I think what drives a lot of people's decision making around that, for example, is liability.
Yeah.
Folks are like, I don't want to share that because if someone builds something and it doesn't go well, then they're going to want to maybe sue us because we shared a document with them, and it's just out of caution, like, why share anything? And it's like, but
there's good reasons why.
There's good reasons to share information if you can have a longer view about the community needs.
It's funny, in earlier episodes, we've actually talked quite a bit in different ways and at different times about risk aversion, and how risk aversion holds people back, and tolerance for risk, which is very different than people being like, I love risky business, I'm going to go look for that's not the opposite of risk aversion, right? Like risk tolerance, taking calculated risks, is really kind of the other end of that spectrum. And so many times when we've talked about leadership or impact, it's that like risk tolerance that comes up as a defining feature. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
So there's a little jingle we get to play in our little opening segment where we get to know you just a little bit better. And I don't want to skip over it because your work is deep and impactful, and it's very easy to go very deep very quickly. And we need our listeners to settle in, grab a coffee or a tea, loosen the stretch on their sweatpants to enjoy this episode. So, okay, maybe that's just me. It's fine. Let's start to get to know you just a little bit more behind the title. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning person.
What's morning mean to you?
Well, just time-wise?
Yeah. Some people say I'm a morning person, and that means they start at 10, and I chuckle.
Got it. I start my day at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that gives me bragging rights in terms of, I know there are morning people that are like
crazy
3 a.m.
Yeah.
morning people.
No
I am
offense
not
to
one
them.
of those yet. But yeah, I'm very focused and productive. Basically, like, morning till noon is like
Sharpest, best.
Yeah, when I do my best work. And then, watch out from noon to 5. I'm a bit more of.
We're recording at 3 p.m. if people are curious.
Yeah. Well, I'd say in the afternoon, it's sort of like I'm good at different things at different times of day. So in the first part of the day, I can really focus on challenging intellectual work. So what is like the hardest problem to solve? If I can really start working on that, without interruption in the morning. That's like my time. Afternoons are good for social stuff, for getting out and talking to people, because that's going to just like keep me more engaged than if I was alone, like with a computer in the afternoon. That's like a tough time for me to stay as focused.
Totally.
And then evening can be a good time maybe for certain like when I was doing video making, like evening, I could edit a video till 3 a.m. if I had a deadline, or if I was just really on like a good
flow,
artistic flow. But for the work I do right now,
you're not spreadsheets and pro formas.
I don't
at midnight.
I like to just get a good night's sleep, and
I'd like to just go back to the I'm not 3 a.m. yet, which I feel like harkens to your Pepe era. Like you're like, I know I've got a Pepe era.
I can see it,
and I will be a 3 a.m.
I'm building up to it.
Yeah, I respect that. I think that's probably me someday. I'm at the point where I like don't make it past 6 a.m. on the weekend, and if I like sleep until 6:30, I'm like, woo, that felt great. It's Saturday. And I remember making fun of my parents years ago for doing the same exact stuff. So I try not to be judgy about who I might be and who other people are currently, because they feel pretty aligned. Like I can't predict that kind of way. Are you a paper to-do list or a digital guy? How do you track your stuff?
Digital.
Yeah.
Depends on personally, I like paper. For work, I do digital.
Interesting. I'm a digital person, but I do feel like there are certain things that the act of physically writing it on a sticky note is what makes it stick, and it is personal stuff.
Outside of work, I try to spend as little time on the computer as I can, even though I still have a lot to do on the computer. I just am really trying to, we just spend too much of our lives on screens.
It's wild.
For a personal to-do list, I like putting that on paper just because it's one less thing to do on the computer.
Yeah. So you probably have the paper calendar on the fridge too?
I'm not there. No, I really rely on digital calendar. Yeah.
My paper calendar is a communication tool and not a remembering tool.
Gotcha.
It's so the other people in my life remember that we said we were having dinner that night.
Yeah, we do have a paper calendar, but I don't use it for a whole lot.
Yeah. It's not where I keep my meetings. It's more like, do not for everybody remember that the dog needs to go to the groomer that day.
Gotcha.
It's that.
Yeah.
How do you reset when your day goes sideways?
When the day goes sideways, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of a good example of when. I mean, just figuring out you got to stop. I mean, I guess having a 4-year-old makes it easier to walk away from stuff.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not going well than it used to. I'd say before I had a kid, I think it would be hard to reset. If things weren't going well, I might really stick with it and try to trudge through it, even though that sometimes isn't what you got to do. You do have to kind of step back from it. With a 4-year-old, it doesn't take. I don't have to wait too long till I have to disconnect and give him a lot of attention and just get through the rest of the day as a parent. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's my way out.
Yeah, I mean,
right
it's
now, but,
genius.
Yeah,
I often think having children. So for listeners, I have like 3 biological kids. I've got a 4th bonus child. Parenting has given me skills that would have taken me an eon to develop in my professional life alone if I hadn't parented in addition to my professional work. Like my patience, I did not naturally have patience, and it was like a learned skill, and the best teachers were my children. Mm-hmm. And plenty of people tried before my kids came along. Mm-hmm. And those were the ones that actually worked. Kids are amazing for that.
Kids are amazing. And it's interesting to like sort of watch the child mind develop and then realize how adults are just big children. Yeah. You know, at a slightly different place in life developmentally, but still dealing with a lot of the same stuff. Maybe they've learned to like repress some more of it.
Yeah.
that kids will just say out loud immediately. Mm-hmm. But it's all kind of still there, and folks are still working through it.
The feeling stuff, right? Like when, you know, for people who are not in a like current active phase of parenting young children, some of the language that gets used a lot these days are like, oh, you have big feelings, and naming your feelings and talking about your feelings. And kids these days and the way parents are parenting, it's like they have such an advantage over adults who still haven't developed that vocabulary. Right. That there's moments sometimes with adults.
I have big feelings right now, but I don't know how to deal with them. Yeah.
There's moments where I just wish the adult sitting across from me could say that. Like, I'm having big feelings and I need help figuring them out. Because I'd be happy to be like, yeah, I think I can help you name some of what you might be feeling right now. It's all over your face.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of adults wouldn't respond well to that.
Yeah.
From another adult.
Right.
Are you having big feelings right now?
I know.
If you can figure out how to say it in a way that doesn't feel
that's a work in progress. I've got a couple, but if I shared it on this podcast, the people I have used it with would know.
Shanna's talking about me. That's what she means.
Yeah, I'm going to let that stay in my secret arsenal.
Okay.
All right, last getting to know you question, and this is one of my favorites. What is your favorite way to spend a day in this region? If you've got 24 hours, what are you doing?
I mean, there's lots of great stuff to do. Having lived on Maple Street for 17 years and Spruce Street for 3 years prior to that, much of that time without a vehicle, except for my, bike, I've always just enjoyed walking Lewiston, walking the downtown, walking the trails, and just I know a lot of people, I know a lot of places. It's easy to start the day just kind of headed somewhere and find people I know and have conversations and see where things go from there. So
I love that. And same. I enjoy a good wander, unscheduled wander. I don't get it much. I always envied you in those days that you'd just take off self. I was like, oh, that's great. I want that in my life.
Thinking of people that I would run into back when I lived on Spruce Street, which is, for those who don't know, right next to Kennedy Park, facing what was above what used to be Speaker's Variety. You were talking about me welcoming you to the community when you moved. So when I moved to Spruce Street, the person that welcomed me was a guy named Bob. I don't know if you remember Bob. He showed up at some visible community meetings on occasion. He was a fixture of Kennedy Park and Trinity Jubilee and Speaker's Variety. He was friends with Pat Speaker. Anyway, there's a video. He has since passed, sadly, but there's a video called Snowstorm on Spruce Street that I made that features Bob and his relationship with Pat Speaker. And anyway, when I was moving in to my apartment on Spruce Street, I was moving into the Tree Street, knew the Tree Street reputation. This was back in 2005.
You were a Bates student, just graduated?
I was not a Bates. I had graduated at this point.
Yep.
So I've been out of Bates for a couple months at this point. But, it was being very cautious, like moving stuff out of my car into the apartment and kind of like locking my car each time I moved things out. And then Bob came walking down the street, and I was like, "Who's this guy?" And he just came up to me, and he was just so friendly. He just started asking me questions, and he was just a really nice guy. And he literally said, like, "Welcome to the neighborhood," and so I just always enjoyed running into him. It was always a positive experience. Oh, he has a cameo in Neighbor by Neighbor.
That's what I thought.
As well. So the guy filming the St. Dom's demolition.
Yeah.
When he like turns to me and is pointing out the similarity of the types of cameras that we have, that was Bob.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Nancy was part of that story for me. Nancy was part of the like welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Her and her pink hat. It's like a hallmark of the neighborhood.
Very much.
Yeah. I lived in the downtown. I mean, I shared a building with Craig for a number of years on Maple Street. I lived on Ash, on the corner of Ash and Bartlett. And I loved the conversations that you'd have day to day with people. And if you live in the downtown, people walking by become people you like get to have a regular conversation with. Like you're catching up on, how's your daughter doing in algebra? Is she still struggling with it? Or did she make the cheerleading team? And like those conversations become conversations over years. All of a sudden that kid who made the cheerleading team is now like getting into college years later. And where I grew up, it was so rural, you didn't get that. You didn't have like the daily interactions with people that way, and you didn't get to, you'd think a small town, and it was a close-knit small town, but you didn't get the opportunity to meet people and become part of their life and hear their life story. And that's been one of the things I've loved about living in this region. It's why I love calling it home and knew immediately. I think within 2 years of living here, I was like, this is my home now. And have never thought differently about it. Is that the ability to like really connect with people, meaningfully connect with them, and those connections last and evolve, and I love that.
Were you looking for a home at that moment in time when you said this is home now? Were you like,
I don't think I think I was young enough to, when I moved here, I had lived in Mechanic Falls and was like, young mom, the twins, I had the twins and I had Tayden. Tayden was 2. The twins were 4 when I moved here, and I was like newly separated. And so I was like looking for a house, right? Like I was looking for housing, and I was, trying to be close to where I was working, and I was working on, at Fuel on Lisbon Street. And so I knew that I was moving because it made sense economically, because it made sense for like getting my kids into childcare. And, like for that life moment, I was like choosing a restarting point. And I wanted a sense of community. That felt really important to me. I didn't know where I would find that and where that would put me in like a housing situation. And so I don't think it was until, I think it was like you guys and the Housing League and like that moment that home and community became synonymous, and I realized I could have it here. And that I think I fully understood it's what I was like desiring and thirsting for was that. If you hadn't, we've talked about it, I think, on the podcast before, but I emancipated at 15. I was, as it turns out, and I didn't realize or have a name for it until much later in life, but I was like, technically homeless through college and didn't have a place to go in the summers. And so home is like a little bit of a contextually interesting word for me in terms of what it means. And yeah, so it was one of those things that I didn't know I was searching for. And then the minute you have it, it's like having a really good meal, right? Like you've eaten before and you know if you're hungry, but you don't know you're craving that. That was what it was like.
Yeah. Lewiston was the first place where I, got to choose where I lived.
Yeah.
And it was, I moved around a lot growing up. So nothing, with the exception, Albany, New York is the one place where I have some family roots, like Saddlemires go back a ways in Albany County. But in terms of feeling like, I was always envious of people who really had a home and a community, and just like knew people as they walked down the street and were a part of churches or institutions, that made the community run and had that history. And it wasn't immediate for me, but like as soon as I started living, as soon as I lived on Spruce Street and started really getting to know folks well, in the community, in the downtown, to me, I said, Lewiston could be home.
Yeah.
And then as I got even more involved, and particularly once I met Julia, like I was like, okay, Lewiston,
is it.
Lewiston is home.
Yeah.
Now that like we can see ourselves here, like this is our home. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, how lucky are we? Because I think some people might go their whole life not connecting that way. And I say, like, where I grew up, there was definitely like multi-generation families, and I don't know that they had that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope that everyone gets to have that.
Right.
But I definitely know. I guess the friends I think of are ones that move to new cities, particularly bigger cities, and have trouble finding their place. I mean, big cities are great too, I'm sure. Big cities are home and community to many people.
Yeah.
But it can be tough, especially as you get older and there's less and less time or inroads to making those kinds of relationships. I mean, at this point, having been here for as long as I have, it's just really great to have decades of experience and relationships to draw on. You know, but it takes time, and it's hard to. Each time you move, you got to start most of that over again. So it can be hard if you don't have that history.
Well, all that fits well into our first segment around building, because it is building community and building ties. Talk to me a little bit about building. I mean, in a most like basic way, housing. And I know you also like
We're not
GC
on articulated
I know
dump trucks yet. Or?
I mean, you went from building community through the lens of housing at the Fair Op, which became the Raise Op, to actually building two brand new buildings and providing housing. And I would say for folks who aren't familiar with Raise Op, you know, in addition to the fact that you've created like physical structures that create places for people to live and be safe, which is in and of itself awesome, you're building a particular type of housing that's like democratic and cooperative. You're building community within that housing model. And then you were building a movement around housing in the state. And so, you know, when you think about all of the building that you have done and that you get to do, what is it that you would want people to know about that who might be, because part of what you do is educate folks and invite them into thinking about kind of different housing styles and types. But what made you decide to build? You could have just lived. You could have just consumed housing. You've been really intentional on many, many points in your personal and professional life to choose to build.
The beginning for me of my real political education and community and education and like how community is built and the value of it to make positive change was with the Visible Community which started back in 2004 in Lewiston, when the city of Lewiston had proposed building a 4-lane boulevard diagonally through the neighborhood, starting at the public theater and going up to B Street Health Clinic, and demolishing the homes and displacing the people with no plan for where they would go. The Visible Community was a group of primarily downtown residents and their allies who organized and defeated the road, but went on, learned that protest was very limited in its potential for lasting change.
Yeah.
So it started to develop more and more proactive methods of getting involved, getting people elected to city council. That was what led me to serve on Lewiston City Council, and all the committees that I have. And I've served, basically, once I served on my first committee for the city of Lewiston, representing the Visible Community in that work. I've just served on committees consecutively since then. That was, I think, around 2008 or 2009.
I don't know that I've ever known you not to serve on a committee.
No, because we met in 2010.
Yeah.
So I've been on committees ever since then.
Yeah.
But so the Visible Community kept doing community surveys, and this was back when housing was a lot cheaper. But community surveys about like what mattered to folks, what were they concerned about, what kinds of things could we address as a community that would make their life better, and it kept coming back to housing. Housing was never anything other than number one on the list. And I think, and more, I think as groups continue to survey their members, and maybe now it's more common knowledge, but like I remember when you did the community health needs assessment, that was not a housing survey, that was like a health survey.
Yeah, it didn't have anything to do with housing until it did.
But then like housing, right, but then like health, questions about health pointed back to housing.
Yeah.
So for the visible community, which was starting from the framework of, here's the Tree Street neighborhood. It's a neighborhood with a lot of challenges. The city's first approach, at least at this point in time, was to like just knock it down, old school urban renewal philosophy. We don't want to do that. But
with a side of, don't worry, that's cleaning it up.
Right. But what do we want to do? What matters to us? And it just kept being housing and different. At that time, it was more of a focus on housing conditions and abusive landlords, and trying to address that somehow, trying to improve the housing and make the relationship between tenants and landlords more friendly. And so that was my entry point for starting to realize, as someone who had grown up with stable housing, I think up until that point, to me, housing was just like, it was a personal choice. If you had more money, you could get nice housing. If you had less money, you get something. But it was not clear to me until my work with the visible community how fundamental housing is to so many aspects of life in terms of your like physical health, in terms of the social relationships you form, in terms of your economic opportunity, in the way that housing is used to organize communities and to organize them into folks who have wealth and folks who do not, and you put the folks who do not have
folks
wealth
who have
like
cars
into,
and folks who do not.
Yeah,
there's a lot of organizing principles.
There is,
or at least outcomes, because I don't know that they're all some are.
Yeah, some of it's intentional, some of it's not, some of it's by design, some of it's by personal preference, but it has huge implications for communities in terms of how they solve problems together and grow. And it has huge implications, for the individual inhabitants of each home, and what their opportunities are or lack thereof is greatly determined by their housing and its condition and their relationship to it. So I was doing video making. I mean, that was my relationship to the visible community initially. Was just I was the video guy.
Yeah,
I was volunteering my video services to document and hold political leaders at that time accountable for what they were saying. So we'd record it, and if they didn't do what they said they were going to do, then we'd run the tape, show it on public access and stuff like that. Great Falls TV. At a certain point, it felt like the video making was not sufficient. There was, big problems that needed to be addressed, and I felt after we started the housing cooperative to meet our own needs.
Yeah.
And as sort of we were doing as I was participating in the visible community and that type of housing activism in a volunteer capacity, I was asking myself, like, is there more I can do? Like, is telling story through video the limit of what I have to contribute, or is there a way that what I've learned through starting the housing cooperative for myself with my friends, we can take both that knowledge and that tiny institution that we had created and make it something more substantial that can help more people. So it was in 2015. I had just finished getting my MFA, and then I stopped making art.
Yep.
I mean, but in the process, I mean, a lot of my time getting my Master of Fine Arts degree in visual art, a lot of my visual art was asking those kinds of questions, like, the intersection of art and community change, and exploring the issue of housing in particular was kind of what helped me get there. But it did feel ironic to
just be done.
To go through that process only to stop, making videos professionally.
As a parent now, you can experience that whole college journey from a different lens.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I say with a couple of college kids of my own.
Sure.
I would just add, from my perspective, one of the things that I think is really interesting, because part of the way that I the very long and windy road that brought me to this moment and this role in my life started in housing, started with the Housing League and the visible community, and realizing that housing was so intricately linked to health and public health and educational outcomes and economic outcomes. And, one thing led to another. And I say that because I sit here with you, my version of that is like 15, 16 years later, and through a very different lens. And the issue was maybe named differently, and what people wanted to see around the issue of housing was a little bit different back then, for sure. It was accountability and, safety and still priorities. But I say that because even today, as we poll our members, our members of the chamber say that housing is one of the biggest issues for their workforce, for the, to have a stable workforce and a safe workforce. Housing is one of it. Affordable housing is a big piece of it. Housing comes up over and over and over. Here we are 15 years later. And I don't know that employers or the business community was thinking of housing as a concern back then. So part of me feels like, I guess we didn't solve that in 15 years, which wasn't really an expectation. But part of me also feels like there was a movement that got built there, and being able to understand the importance and impact of housing has spread to new stakeholders who understand an issue that has been talked about for a long time, and that is unlocking growth and opportunity in our community. And I really see so much of the work that you and others did in the Visible Community and the Housing League are the roots that have helped create some of that fruit that we're bearing today, and allows that conversation to continue with new solutions like what you've done.
Yeah. And I think, the Neighborhood Transformation Plan, which was produced around 2018, 2019, with funding from the Choice Neighborhood Grant that the city got, which was a massive community undertaking, and it had tons of public input and process around it, and is resulting in a lot of substantial housing development in this community. There's a pretty straight line from the very early days of the Visible Community's work to starting. I mean, one thing I think the Visible Community did well, and I feel like I've had conversations with former city administrator Ed Barrett about this, is the way culture changed at City Hall around planning.
Yeah.
I mean, when the Heritage Initiative, which was the name of the plan to demolish the neighborhood and develop the 4-lane boulevard through it, that was done with zero public process.
Yeah.
It was just a meeting. It was just like a plan that effectively the city administrator had come up with at the time, and one or two closed-door meetings.
A different administrator than Ed Barrett.
A different administrator than Ed Barrett.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really not any city leaders today that were there at that time. The plan was just announced. I mean, tons of stakeholders even had no idea. Even community leaders of nonprofit organizations, for example, that would be impacted, had no idea. They just announced this is what we're going to do. And the Visible Community's response in the early days was the People's Downtown Master Plan. And that was the first, this is the way we think planning should happen. We think there should be public meetings.
Right.
People who are going to be impacted, especially folks who stand to lose their homes, need to be a part of the conversation. And the Visible Community did that with a couple $1,000s from a small grant that they got. And everyone was invited. The city was invited. Tenants were invited. Landlords were invited. And that was the beginning of this is with very little money. This is better than what the Heritage Initiative was. And then slowly the city started to incorporate more and more of that practice in the way it did public planning. You had the Downtown Neighborhood Action Plan. You had eventually, a number of plans that led up to the comprehensive plan that I think was,
Legacy Lewiston,
a good
that
Legacy
particular
Lewiston,
comp plan.
Yeah.
Beautiful coffee book plan. You can actually enjoy flipping through the pages.
Yeah, it's user friendly, and that had a lot of good process around it too. I mean, you are limited in how drawn out you can make a planning process, and how many workshops and facilitated things you can do is to some extent a matter of budget. And that was using just city resources to do the state mandated comp plan. The Neighborhood Transformation Plan actually had federal resources through the Choice Grant to do it. But anyway, just over that period of time, some of the same people have been at the table, like advocating for those things and advocating for good process. And I think the way we do planning today is just completely different from the way the city was approaching it before.
Yeah.
And I think that's to the credit of the visible community.
Absolutely. I serve on the planning board in Lewiston and, have for years prior to this role, and have always enjoyed planning, like just planning, like economic planning, community planning, just planning in general. A little bit of a nerd and wonk and a good company for that. And, most recently, the Riverfront Island Master Plan is the most recent plan that's come out. And that was an update of the first Riverfront Island. And even that had engagement in it. And it just is, I think any version of a plan that would come off the shelf and be presented to community now would have so much pushback, because the culture and fundamentally the shift and expectations of what it means to have presented a plan on behalf of the city of which we live in. And it really has changed to expect not just to ask me, but to have shown me that you listened in some way, which doesn't mean I got what I want necessarily, but that you heard it and reflected it back. And they're doing that in Auburn too. That's, the roots of it being in Lewiston and the, primary impact being in Lewiston, I just think that work has spread far beyond not just the downtown or the city of Lewiston, but I think it really changed how anyone connected to, working in, visiting in, having lived in at one point in Lewiston and wherever they are now, they expect it too. And it has shifted how government works in so many other communities, and is part of why it's curriculum and being taught in other places, both the way that you document it and some of those plans themselves are, showing up in different places. I want to talk about leadership.
Okay.
And your thoughts on leadership. You've led in so many different ways. You've already touched on some of it. You've organized, you've done public service, you've served on nonprofit boards, you staff run your own nonprofit, and so many other versions along the way. And you've also led through art as art form as a way of leading and change making. How has your definition of leadership changed over time? When you think about kind of that journey that you've been describing, what does that mean for leadership?
My definition of leadership, when I started with the visible community and I was learning about community organizing, I was really focused on the power that every person had to be a part of change making and leadership. I mean, maybe I think I had a more uncomfortable relationship with the word leadership at that time anyway, to some extent, because sometimes in the visible community we kind of bragged about being leaderless in a way, and that was actually kind of came up as a point of frustration with the city, because it tried negotiating with our organizer, and the organizer's like, I'm not a decision maker for the group, like the group decides, and the city kind of said, like, we want your leader, like send us your leader so that we can convince them of what we want to do and then send them back to tell you what the plan is. And we're like, we don't do things that way. You got to like talk to all of us, sort of. So it's just super horizontal.
Yeah.
And I do think that everyone has the capacity to lead in some kind of way.
And you've always thought that?
Well, I think I learned that. I mean, I wasn't thinking that much about leadership prior to that. Yeah, I was thinking about making movies.
Yeah.
I mean,
when
you make a movie, when you make a movie, the director's the leader, I guess. But everything I did was usually just like, I was doing documentary, so I was doing everything. I'd record, I'd edit. There was less conversation about, I mean, I would lead the project, but I don't know. It was just, I wasn't using that terminology. I wasn't thinking about it in that kind of way. It was more just like an artistic thing I was doing. So no, I wasn't thinking about it until I was involved in that kind of community organizing work. So at that time, I was thinking about leadership as like, how do you build the leadership capacity of individuals, no matter where they're at? Like, they've all got something to contribute, and they all have a way in which they can lead on something. And I still think that's true. But I do now embrace more the role of, maybe the kind of leadership that I was more afraid of back at that point in my life.
Yeah.
I do respect the role of the more traditional leader, which is not to be confused with someone that just tells everyone else what to do. A good leader of of an organization or of, a movement or something like that needs to be someone who builds trust with other leaders and with their constituents, whether those constituents are voters or just members of an organization or just, whoever the impacted stakeholders are. That leader needs to be someone who can build trust with them. Mm-hmm. There's different ways of earning that trust, but that trust is like essential.
Yeah.
And there needs to be some form of endorsement between those members or constituents and the leader, and there needs to be some mechanism of accountability. So that's not this is what's happening to you. It's that you are asking me to do this thing because you trust me.
Yeah.
And you think I'm qualified to do it, or you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
or we can't find anyone else, or we can't find anyone else who is willing or could do it better.
I don't think people realize how much leadership happens because it's no one else wants to do it. There's a lot of
it's just
leading.
Circumstantial. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The leader has to earn that trust. Mm-hmm. There has to be a dynamic and sort of responsive relationship between the leader and the folks who are being led. And that is really important. And if you don't have that, even a group of good, well-meaning folks can still get lost. Yeah. And doing the cooperative housing work has really helped me confront that truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you can find that in a lot of different realms, but this is the one I'm working in, and I can see how leadership is important. And if you don't have people who can and are willing to assume those leadership roles and really use them to the benefit of the group, it can be much harder to function effectively, to do, the work that needs to be done.
To have impact.
Yeah, to have impact. I mean, impact kind of makes it sound like, I think not even just to have impact, but just to get through the day. To have basic needs met.
To operate.
I think to have basic needs met, to sustain. We need good leaders both to sustain and to grow.
Yeah.
And maybe different kinds of leaders. Maybe you need a different leader for growth versus sustainability.
I've witnessed that.
But yeah, we need them. It's not the only thing we need. And I guess that's kind of the trap of the idea of the traditional leader is they probably get overcredited for achievements.
Totally.
And they'll also have to take blame, which maybe they feel, they might feel like they don't deserve either. Yeah. And that but you kind of have to, that's kind of part of being the leader
package.
Is taking the hits.
Yeah.
And trying to share the credit for the positive achievements as much as one can. It's kind of unavoidable to an extent.
Different people lead in different ways, right? And, what your preferred method is or how you prefer to be led or how you prefer to lead is like personal choice and circumstance and experiences. But I spent 10 years in a leadership fellowship, and there was a lot of leadership lessons, and my own relationship and learning changed over time. But I remember this one was the lesson of the first follower. And I went through a period in my life too where I kind of bristled at leadership, and leadership only meant the traditional hierarchical, decide and announce, top down kind of structure. And so being a leader was synonymous to that, and I was not going to be that. And so yuck. Just in summary, yuck, right? And I learned the importance of the first follower, which is also leading, right? The view of a leader, and it was articulated with this YouTube video of this wild person getting up and doing some really non-traditional dance moves at a festival, and it's this huge field with all these people sitting on blankets. Have you seen the video? And it's like a leadership lesson video. I'm not just making this up, but it's narrated in this like very traditional documentary voice of like, and now you'll see the first follower arriving to the center of the field, feeling the music.
Right, it's like a National Geographic.
But there's this like, the leader is essentially a crazy solo person unless there are people who give that trust and who say, I believe in this and I'm joining this and, I support your leadership. And leadership development as an action and as a like goal around being what type of leader you are and what type of leaders you follow, to me makes it less this like final you are a leader or you are a follower, but like the first follower is both a follower and a leader. And I think that's just such like that helped me bridge what it means to lead and to like be less bristled at the term of leader. Because I remember there was a time where people would refer to me as a leader and I was like, oh, no, thank you. I got to witness some of that journey for you. And you've been an amazing leader. You've always sought consent and mutuality and trust and, have listened to lead. And I think that's why you've been trusted and successful, not just here. And I think sometimes people who are in the Lewiston, Auburn area, who know you and know the work of Raise Up might not understand the absolute, kind of groundbreaking coolness of the work that you've done and how it's respected in these larger circles because you're pretty humble about it. And the people who, work with you and are part of the cooperative, some of them are 100% behind the movement as well, but a lot of them are just like, this is the best housing gig you can get around here. Like you have a say in your housing, you get beautiful housing, you get to be neighbors with cool people, right? So like, and it's not that they're not connected to the housing cooperative and the role of being an active cooperative member, but like it's a great gig if you can find a way to get into one of your apartments. It's like the best quality, great lifestyle housing around. And it would be really easy for people to not kind of know just what you've been doing here and what it means in terms of leading for what's possible for housing cooperatives. It's just super cool and really easy to just be like, I know sometimes I talk to residents who are like, we overpaid our rent because we didn't have much for maintenance, so we got to make a donation to a nonprofit we support, and how cool is that? And I'm like, pretty awesome. It's amazing. Craig, tell me, as you have to get ready to go, usually we like to check in on like what you might tell your younger self, but I actually think what is most valuable from you, what would you tell someone coming up to you and saying, I also want to be in change making and I want to do impactful work? Maybe it's in housing, maybe it's in the neighborhood. Like, what advice would you give someone who also wants to do something cool, do something meaningful?
I mean, it depends on where they're at in their journey, I suppose. It might be a different answer dependent on that. But I mean, for folks who are looking to get started, I do think if you're interested in community change, you need to engage with the community first and get to know it. So for most folks, that's just finding local organizations and volunteering and spending time. And that's, some folks move faster than I do. I'm pretty slow. Like, I feel like it took me a very long time to just spend time in the community and meet people, understand the issues, and then start to see a place for myself. And actually, I think the best, well, for me, the path has actually usually been being asked and being and responding when asked. I mean, the Visible Communities one day was the one who was like, Craig should be the one to like speak at council tonight, or Craig should be the one to, ask that city councilor this question. So first I was asked to do the video work, and I did it. And then I was asked to do something more. And a lot of it has been just being present, contributing in some way, whatever way you can sort of find to start, and then being open to the opportunity when your community asks you to be a leader or to have a new role, be ready to respond to that. But it does take some patience and some time just getting to know stuff. It's hard to. Sometimes we get a lot of folks who want to volunteer. They kind of want to have a big impact in a short period of time, and it's hard to know what to do with, at least for our organization. Maybe other groups have a role for that, but in the kind of work that I do, I often am not sure what to do with that type of opportunity, because I feel like the kind of work we do just involves really being present for a long time and understanding the people and the place, and then you can be effective in whether it's professional or volunteer. Like that's really
relationship building.
The relationship building
doesn't happen in
so big.
30 minutes a week.
Yeah, individual relationships, understanding the culture, understanding the place is all sort of essential to really being positioned to make a positive impact. You could make a negative impact if you're in a hurry. If you don't have much time, you can come mess things up pretty well. But I'm not in the practice of.
That's not the
advising
bumper
people
sticker
on
that you want to drive away with.
No,
that's great. Craig, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
Mark, any parting words that you want to?
I would like to know how has fatherhood changed you?
I love being a dad. I really do. It has definitely changed me. I mean, I'm still in it, really deep in it, with very little time to reflect. So it's definitely affected my short-term memory. I forget things a lot more because I think I just don't have time to create the memories, which is why I use video camera for that. Video camera helps me remember stuff. Boy, that's a great question. Thank you. Fatherhood has changed me. Well, it's changed me, and it's changed me physically. It's changed me in so many ways. I almost don't know where to start. Yeah. It's interesting to, I've been very close with friends who have had kids, and I've been seeing them go through that. It's interesting to just kind of see parents are kind of going through this whole different experience that other folks are without kids or not. And having been someone without kids, for a while as an adult until recently, I just wasn't aware of that world in the way that I am now. Mm-hmm. And the way that being a parent, there's a lot of stuff that used to feel a lot more fluid, like you could just kind of choose how you live, or even, it's interesting the way it affects, we don't have time to get into this topic, but gender roles and stuff like that. A lot of things that used to feel much more open suddenly feel a lot more determined, despite anyone saying they want it to be that way. Yeah. Being a parent changes everything, and mostly for the better so far. But yeah, I really love being a father. It's been a wonderful, magical experience.
I love seeing you in fatherhood. And everything you just described, I can remember moments when you were in that world and I was in the parenting world, that you'd offer some insights or some advice on things that I could choose, and I would just chuckle and be like, I absolutely can't choose that.
Cannot
That's
choose.
Not an option.
And I can definitely look back and be like, I had no idea. I just had no idea.
I'm running around with 3 kids in diapers, and Craig's like, you could reduce your carbon footprint by not having a car.
Yeah, why
don't
you just bike everywhere?
I was like, where do I put the groceries, let alone the 3 humans on the bike, Craig?
Sure.
I remember you getting a car.
One list of examples of things that.
As you asked that question, I was like, oh, I've witnessed some of these too.
You got it. Yeah.
And I always just remember being like, someday. And so I've enjoyed. You're an incredible father, and it has changed you in beautiful ways.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
We're gonna get to know you. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna get to know you and what you're all about. We're gonna get to know just what makes you feel alive. We're gonna get to know how you build, lead, and thrive.
Build, Lead, and Thrive. Voices of the Androscoggin.